Y'all ready to be history?
Get started.
Welcome.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
To the Pro Audio Suite.
These guys are professional. They're motivated.
With Tech to the VO stars. George Whittam, founder of Source Elements. Robert Marshall, international audio engineer. Darren Robbo Robertson. And global voice. Andrew Peters. Thanks to Tribooth. Austrian audio. Making passion heard. Source Elements. George the Tech Whittam. And Robbo and AP's international demos. To find out more about us, check theproaudiosuite.com.
Line up, ladies!
Here we go.
And welcome to another Pro Audio Suite, thanks to Tribooth. Don't forget the code TRIPAP200 to get $200 off your Tribooth. And Austrian Audio, making passion heard. We're talking about budget gear because historically budget gear was always pretty average. But has it improved?
I think so.
Let's discuss.
I'd say yes.
Yeah, I would totally.
You know, the original Rode NT1 was made of plastic.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I did not know that. That's funny because I always thought the Rodes were like made very robust.
If I type in eBay, do I type in plastic Rode NT1? Will it come up?
It could. It just may do that, yeah. And in fact, the weird thing is they've actually become collectible.
Well, that's what I was thinking. Like, if you had one of those, that sounds like it's relatively not common.
That one sounds even more like a 416.
Look at me now. There you go. Look at that.
Yeah.
That's a 5th gen.
That's the 5th gen, exactly.
Oh, you have a 5th gen now?
Yeah. Well, I've had it for a while. Thank you, Rode. But
do you know what's missing on that box? And I'm going to tell Rode right now if anybody's watching. You know what's missing on the box?
Anything that indicates it's USB?
Standing in front of the correct side of the microphone.
Okay. Yeah.
You're supposed to talk into the top of it, right?
Yeah, I can kind of see that.
People get it wrong all the time. All the time.
Definitely.
Because they talk to the logo.
We used to have a mic in a voiceover booth for all the video editors, and we had a picture next to the mic with arrows showing where to speak into it, and they would constantly talk into the top of this side address mic. No matter, you can't even, just pictures, like no words.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know it's off topic, but this is a big problem. It's like when you sell a product, make it painfully obvious. If it's an entry-level price point product, pretend in your mind's eye that there's actors that are beginners or podcasts who are beginners buying your beginner-priced product and put a picture on the box. Don't assume. Don't assume, because we're all engineers. We get it, but typical users, that's not so obvious.
Yeah. It's interesting how, like we're saying, technology has come a long way, but the user side of things, their knowledge hasn't really come a long way. Like the amount of voiceover artists who you see with poor mic technique and, those sort of things is still sort of wows me.
Yes.
It goes back to the same thing where, you could give a good engineer just a pile of SM57s and you can give somebody else like all the gear they want. And that engineer who knows where to put the mics and how to set the gain and everything, they're going to get a better drum sound than someone who has whatever they want, because it's not the gear.
Absolutely.
It's the voice talent. It's,
Well, look at the Beatles, 4 tracks and a few microphones.
Yeah. The only thing I can see that would be an issue is entry-level stuff is headphones. That's the only thing you kind of go, ooh, no, because you're just not hearing properly.
Cheap headphones are still cheap headphones. I think you're right. Not that I use a lot of them.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's funny how cheap mics have gotten better than cheap headphones.
Yeah.
I agree with that. Yeah. And there's an entry point on headphones that you really almost never can drop below, and that's around $100.
$100. Yeah. The $30 headphones sound like $30 headphones. Yep.
Yeah. I mean, there's some exceptions. I know people like the Cost Porta Pro, which are they look like 80s Walkman headphones, with the
I've got a pair.
little foam, and they sound really good, But those are outliers and they're not studio cans. If you want proper studio cans that fully encase your ear, enclose your ear, not on ear but around the ear, circumaural, it's the cheaper ones. They can sound okay, but they're crackly. The plastic is cheap. You move and they creak. There's just so many issues with the build quality, so it's hard to get something better than. Or under that,
and I think even the response, like usually in the high end and the clarity and the low end, they're just not really as flat and as wide response. They tend to have a more peaky kind of thing going on.
Yeah, well, case in point, the Austrian audios. I'm still rocking these the at least the 15s. Is that the entry level can from them?
Yeah.
And I think they're pretty great. Well, the 20s came out, right? And they're just a little more expensive, but they have an extended top and an extended bottom, not without sounding in any weird colored, not sounding exaggerated. They just have a little bit more
Bit of hype.
of both ends of the spectrum, and that little extra price is going to give you that. So there are things you may miss out on if you don't pay a little bit more.
Yeah. Well, then there's interfaces too. I mean, you've downgraded in the last couple. Well, I shouldn't say downgraded. You've reduced the size of your interfaces. I mean, the SSL2 is an amazing interface, but half the size of what you used to have, and half the price probably.
Well, I've actually moved the SSL2 out now.
Well, you're still using the Audient, right?
I've got the Audient for all the big stuff, yeah. And then for the laptop, I use the Passport, which I used to have the SSL2. And
I think what people don't realize a lot about this gear is like let's take, for example, converters. If the company is not making their own converters, which very few companies are, then really they're using converters that are built on a chip, typically from, there's a company called AKM that makes most of the converters. So your cheap Behringer gear has the same converter as some of your really expensive gear. And unless you really fuck up the analog side or the power supply, you're going to get the same sound because it's the same chip. Give it 5 volts of electricity, give it the audio from, the input, and all this gear is using the same little tiny chips, and the mic preamps, the same thing. Whatever it is, I'm going to get these wrong, but the 72, or I forget the chip numbers, but there's a few chips that are mic preamps on a chip. And again, you just implement it properly, which half the time when you buy the chips, the manufacturers give you an example of how to make a mic preamp on it, and half these things will use the same implementation of there's a mic preamp.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, part of that's just because of the way China flaunts intellectual property, right? So the same exact circuitry is being replicated and used over and over. And usually what happens is the cream floats to the top. So they're going to use the circuits that people like the most, because they can do it so cheaply. And I think that's another reason. But I'll argue to say too that the low-end audio interfaces that people like are not getting cheaper. They're actually getting more expensive. Let's take the Focusrite Scarlett Solo and the 2i2, for example. They've gotten more expensive because they're feature creeping them now. They are adding more functionality. They're adding auto input gain level control and, other functions that were never there before. So it's interesting to see there isn't that $100 audio interface that you can really go for anymore. Now it's $160, $170. Yeah.
Well, no, but there is that $100 audio interface. I mean, have you spent any time on Amazon looking at some of the cheap gear that's out there?
No, I know, but I mean, these are off-spin brands, not the big leaders in
They're all off-spin brands, and they all make their interfaces with red, and they make them look like a Scarlett and all that other stuff. But again, they're probably just same chips.
They do sometimes luck into a good product.
Let me get something.
Okay. Yeah, there's a microphone called the Stellar X2, and they just kind of lucked into getting a decent sounding $200 mic, and now that microphone is extremely popular. And people will go buy that mic that have a better mic because they heard that this mic is so good, which is the weirdest thing. People are buying cheaper mics to supplement their better mics, and I'm like, I don't get that at all.
Because they want to travel with a cheap mic, or they don't want to worry about it.
But that's some of it, but it's also that they just heard it's a good mic, so they went and bought it, and with no real thought about why they bought it.
Well, okay, so I've been trying to figure out, Sage is doing music composition, and she's now in the position where she's got practically a whole orchestra working on an arrangement that she did. And I'm like, record that. And she's too bothered to record it. So I'm trying to figure out how to get it easy for her to record. I'm on Amazon.
Yeah.
Notice here, USB-C cable, right?
Yeah.
2 XLRs.
No way.
$30
They make that now?
$30 fucking dollars. And this thing will sample at 384 kilohertz.
Wow.
24-bit 384 XLR cable. Are
With
you
Phantom?
for $30? No Phantom. This is line input.
Yeah, most of those are. Oh, it's a line input. Okay, so it's a pair of balanced line ins at super high sample rate into USB-C.
Plug it into a
for
phone.
$30.
Just jam it into your phone.
Just jam it in there.
I would love to have that.
Yeah. Even if it doesn't fit, jam it.
Even if you've got a lightning
Yeah.
port, just jam the USB-C in there and you'll be right, mate.
Well, no, you get a little $10 USB-C to Lightning adapter, and there you go. It doesn't use enough juice, so it doesn't even need a power
There's one
adapter.
right there.
Yep.
Yep.
And I'm trying to still figure out exactly what preamp I set her up with, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of it is just that there's just a race to supply these problem solver things, and that's cool. If that cable you held up was made by Sennheiser, there would be
It'd be
$150, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, or $200. You know, but it doesn't need to be made by Sennheiser because they're so good now at making things like this in China. Now, does it have Neutrik connectors on it?
They're probably Neutrik ripoffs. Like they're not quite Neutrik.
That's what I mean. They're not Neutrik. Because a Neutrik connector, each one's $10.
Yeah, but check this out. How can you do anything differently? There's the business end of it. The only thing that's in there is a chip. Like one freaking chip is about all you have room for in there. They just hooked up a chip to the cables and...
By the way,
like
if you go to Apple Store to get a Thunderbolt cable, $70 US for a 1 meter Thunderbolt cable.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
I
all
buy
it
them
costs.
used for $20. Yeah.
Yeah, but if you have to go to the Best Buy because you forgot to tell your client to go buy a Thunderbolt cable for their Apollo, guess what you're running out to Best Buy to buy? A $70 Thunderbolt cable, right? So yeah, it's and how about like in terms of just accessories too? Like I can say that there's a lot of like mic booms that have come out because of the podcasting revolution.
Yeah.
Dude, I got a
And
good
so
one for
many
that.
people have these $20 mic booms and they are garbage.
They're rubbish.
Dude,
They
hold
are
on.
crap.
Look at this.
Yeah.
Okay. First of all, you see these connectors everywhere, and they're $20
They're all
bucks.
blurred out. So you're
But
holding
it's
up
so
one of those
good.
clamps.
It has the two kinds of camera mounts, like the 1/4 inch and the 1/8 inch.
What they're good at doing in China is metal. They're good at
Yes.
steel and aluminum in China. They have the machining down. That stuff has gotten really affordable. Like I'm no longer buying Manfrotto this and this and that. I'm like buying Small Rig or Newer with 2 E's. All these like
It's the same thing.
Chinese
You
brands.
find these like mic arms that are like $40 for an adapter, right? And I had to buy a pair of speaker mounts for our booth, and I did not want to spend $100 on speaker mounts. So I'm on Amazon. Here's this thing. It's a short leg and another short leg with that clamp on it, and the thing is great. On one knob, when you tighten this one knob here, it tightens all the knuckles, including all the little.
it's called a magic arm.
Yeah, $15.
See, if you bought that at a grip store in Hollywood, that would be a $150 magic arm. No, more, way more. It's called a magic arm. But now they've figured out how to duplicate these in China, like really inexpensively. And those are the things I'm not worried about buying from China, is the hardware made of steel and aluminum. They can't mess those up too badly, and so I don't mind that stuff. But mic cables, that's kind of where I tend to draw the line. I would much rather have a mic cable that's made with Mogami or some kind of a reputable conductor and a Neutrik or something on the end.
Until you get a RJ45 Bloom and send it down a freaking wire that's as big as a molecule.
Sorry, say that
Am
again.
I right?
What do you guys use? Yeah, explain that again. You lost all of us on that one.
Okay. We did a whole episode about basically converting RJ45, like you have the RJ45 breakout, so one RJ11.
Oh, yes,
sorry,
yes. The
RJ45
cat box,
cable.
the ballons that
Yeah.
go from RJ45 to balanced. Yeah.
And okay, quite frankly, that cable is running at megahertz, sending shitloads of data. That there's not a lot of tolerance there for how like
Yeah.
What-
Does
what is it doing
does the
that-
copper, oxygen-free, blah, 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 matter that much? That's the question, right? And it probably doesn't.
Cables are not about the wire. Cables are about the connectors.
What are the big brands for cables in Australia that people commonly use?
Probably the same as yours. I mean, I use Canair, Starquad.
Oh, Canary, you mean?
Oh, yeah, Canary.
Or
Canary is very
however you
good.
pronounce it, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I use, but I make my own cables and then Neutrik connectors.
And, yeah. Oh, are you handy with a soldering iron, Andrew?
He's very good with his soldering iron,
I am.
unlike me.
He's got a steady hand.
Steady hand.
I've just never had the patience for it. I'll be
No,
honest.
we have cheap stuff like Rapco and Horizon. Horizon's really junk. The cables you got to watch out for are the ones with the molded ends that you can't do anything with after they go bad.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Like those are the
right.
super
That's
cheap
right.
ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But,
But
yeah,
the
so with
wire-
cables,
the wire's the wire.
I buy mine from Cable Chick.
Cable Chick?
Cable Chick. There you go. There's a plug.
Oh, really? Is that an Aussie distributor?
Yeah, she's the best.
Yeah, dear, that doesn't sound very...
It does- yeah. You got to get your
just
mind out of
like-
the gutter, AP, seriously.
won't be taking her out again.
No,
But,
exactly.
But yeah, the things I would not cheap out on is headphones and cables.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
can probably you can get away with a microphone. You can get away with an interface.
I have to agree with that.
Yeah.
There is one brand of cable that's been distributing on Amazon called WBC or World Best Cable, and they are doing like their equivalent of a Mogami Gold, which is like a $70, $80 US mic cable, and it's 30 US maybe. And they sell the quad cable. So they're the plus and the minus, or the pin, what do you call it, pin 2 and pin 3, they're each a twisted pair.
Yeah, you're talking about quad star cable.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
and they're each a twisted pair, and they're better shielded, and they're only slightly more expensive than a standard cable. So I tell everybody, just get the Star Quad, cables, and you'll be a happy camper. And those are still not that more expensive.
There you go.
Oh, we're seeing Cable Chick now, so we now know it's a real thing. We don't all think Robbo's crazy.
She's cute. I think she's cute. That's why she gets my business.
She's a cute cartoon girl.
If you're plugging the stuff in, it goes behind your desk. It's never going to get moved. You can get away with less expensive cables. But if you're going to be plugging in and out, traveling, you have no room for them to mess up, and then you want to get something better, because I think it's a lot to do with the build and the connectors.
If you're working on the road, if you're on the travel kit, or you're doing a stage travel show, you got to have the best gear, best cables, bar none, because that stuff does take a lot more abuse that way. Yeah, that's absolutely true.
And also the other thing is with cables, if something goes wrong, is just eliminating possibilities of failure.
Mm-hmm. The one thing that I do have, on Andrew's point, is I do have a cable tester that sits in my bottom drawer, and if something's not working, that's the first thing I drag out is, okay, well, let's just make sure the
that's a good
cable's
idea.
right,
Yeah, I've got one of those multi-testers that has a 9-volt battery, and it's got like 2 XLRs, 2 1/4-inch, 2 RCA, and exactly.
Yes, indeed, because then that takes the
Yeah.
guesswork out of it. It's like, okay, the cable's fucked, time for a new one, or the cable's working.
And a good
what
one
else
will
is
tell
it?
you if your cable's in phase or out of phase.
Yes, mine does
it'll
that.
have
Yeah.
the-
Yeah.
If you've got a home studio, that's one thing that's definitely worth investing in, is a really good cable tester, because it will just save you so much grief.
That is very true. That is very true. But the other category we didn't touch on yet before we wrap it up is plugins.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I don't know.
I don't know.
mean,
I think some of the stock plugins are doing really, really, really well. EQ7, Pro Tools. What's wrong with it?
oh, look, nothing. Nothing's wrong with it. I mean, I've been
I'll mix
using
a whole
the
album
Waves.
with EQ7 and Deverb.
Yeah, well, I've been using the Waves F6 for years now. Almost as long as it's been out. It's my go-to for voiceover and vocals and stuff. I don't know. I mean, AI is slowly creeping in there. Is that a good thing? In noise reduction, I feel like it is. But I mean, the Waves Horizon, AI EQ, shit, is that necessary? Is it good? Maybe.
I'm not so. I'm going to be extremely skeptical about AI.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm really skeptical because I'm gonna throw Adobe under the bus because I was at a podcast conference and I listened to one of the Adobe higher ups, showing how amazing I think they just call it Adobe Podcast is the name of the tool now, and it has this insane AI noise reduction thing, right? And the thing is like they're leaning on that and saying this is the penultimate of technology, right? And I listen to the results and I go, that does not sound as good as doing it correctly the first time, or using a proper mic the first time, or me as an engineer tweaking the sound myself. None of what you're doing sounds that good, but you're deciding for us, the users, that is good enough. We're good. It's like this AI thing is good enough.
You're changing expectations as opposed to making your products better. Yeah, absolutely. It's a sort of a cheat's way out of it, really.
But here's what happens. People used to have lower latency phones and cell phones, but now no one thinks that a cell phone has high latency because they're just used to cell phones. They don't know anything different, and it's going to get that way with all this stuff. Yeah, where no one's going to know what a song sounds like directly off of a CD because they only hear MP3s through Spotify. Yeah, and it'll just be lost.
Well, let me ask you this then, since we're semi on the subject, like a crappy microphone, right? But a good mic emulator. Mm-hmm. Is that just making a bad thing worse, or is it making a bad thing better, do you reckon?
I think it makes you feel good about your cheap purchase.
I mean, well, that's kind of essentially what the Sphere mic is.
Mm-hmm. The Townsend is.
There's nobody saying that that's an exceptionally good microphone. I mean, I think it is a good microphone, but it's not categorically amazing for the price. It's still...
I think possibly the Antelope microphone is technically a better mic than the Townsend as far as mic build and...
I don't know. I mean, the Sphere
the Antelope looks pretty damn nice, actually. Yeah. Just on its own as a mic. But it's true. It's like, you buy this cheap thing and then you want software to make you feel good about it.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, like during the pandemic, I had a client, we got a Townsend Sphere L22, an Apollo, and we emulated a U87. The client was happy. Mm-hmm. And so it was what we could do at the time and what we needed to do to get away with getting the project done, and it worked. Is it as good as the U87? Mm-hmm. I don't really know. Is it truly as good? I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Is it just another flavor, or is it even anything like a U87 necessarily? Is it just,
But I mean, here's the thing though too, right? It's like, maybe some of this stuff has got better, like maybe cheap microphones have got better and all the rest of it, but you still come back to the basic principle that if you put even, a pretty good mic in a shit room, it's going to sound like crap. If you put a great mic in a shit room, it's going to sound like crap. You've still got to start with the basics no matter what happens.
But here's what you can say about the gear. It is cleaner. All the cheap gear, the noise floors have dropped. Absolutely. Yeah.
So why do I keep hearing SM7Bs through cloud lifters and everything else that just have a lot of hiss? I hear so many people sending me audio files of a SM7B through a cloud lifter or fill in the blank booster, because everybody's making one of these boosters now, and it's still noisy. It's still a noisy soup. Why is that still a thing?
I don't know, because the SM7 needs especially a lot of gain, but
even the SM7DB, somebody sent me a recording with that through a Scarlett, of course, and noise
filled with hiss,
like crazy. I'm like, why are people buying a $500 mic that's noisy? The marketing is so good on that microphone that people are still buying a noisy mic when they could buy a $100 mic that sounds better.
Yeah.
It's nuts.
Or it has a lower noise floor because the $100 mic is got a chip in it and it's not so weighted down by the dynamic. I mean, that's just like nature of the beast, right? The SM7 is a dynamic mic that has a certain, physical need for a preamp that pushes that preamp to the point where it's, making noise. But I guess my point is that, 30 years ago, you go to Radio Shack and you buy a mixer and it's noisy. Now, you go to Amazon and you buy some unknown... there's no Radio Shack, but you go to Amazon and you buy some unknown Chinese brand mixer, and it might be made out of plastic, and it's holy just junk as far as like how it's built, but it's not noisy like
clean.
that Radio Shack. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that actually is true. That is true. There's been definitely an optimization of circuit design that's happened. There's an intellectual sort of, what's the institutional knowledge around the design of these circuits now, and it's been passed around.
And these chips have been commodified.
Yeah, they're commodified and they're not closely guarded anymore. So that's all changed. Yeah. But I'll use TDR Nova free over FabFilter Pro Q3 any day of the week. I know there's certain things FabFilter probably can do that TDR can't, but I haven't found one that I need for.
Well, I'm not on the Pro Q bandwagon, I'll be honest. I don't even own it. Any of that stuff. I see people jumping up and down and making noise about how good it is, but I don't know. I don't see it. I've played with the demo.
I am perfectly happy with Waves and Plug-in Alliance.
That's the thing. Like, people seek out a new EQ because they have not learned how to use an EQ.
Fix
your
head, not
they're
your
like,
gear.
well, that one doesn't sound very good. Like,
yeah. It's like, well, it's doing the same thing as the other one. He's like, seriously.
Yeah.
I don't get it. I don't. I think the hype's just around because it looks cool, or it is cool, or it's trendy, or whatever. I think it's become like a fashion brand.
Pro Tools Expert did a really good article recently about EQs, digital like plug-in EQs, and what the difference is with how some of the math happens. And the really good ones will oversample, because if not, you get some reflections and some things that happen. But I think that even that, again, just like with the chips, and you can just buy buckets of these good chips now, same thing. You go up on the web, and there's just all this open source code. You want to make a good EQ? There's open source code that will give you a good starting point for building your own EQ. Yeah. And a lot of this knowledge has gotten commonplace. And what I think what happens because of that also is that it makes everything more disposable. So these mics are so much better now that now it's like, I bought a mic. I bought another mic. I didn't like that mic anymore. and you end up with like 80 microphones in your closet. Whereas back in the day, you'd buy a 414 and that was your mic for life. Mm-hmm. And some people still do that, but now you can buy 20 mics for the same price as your one 414, and each one has a slightly different character and a different form factor and works in the bag here and works for traveling there. And they're all almost that really kick-ass 414. Not really, but they're so close that, you're willing to spend the money on multiple items and flexibility, and it's become disposable, unfortunately, I think.
Well, there's also drum mic kits. You can see drum mic kits that are entire kit. Everything's mic'd for $300.
$200.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. Those are very common. So, yeah, I think it all comes down to your skills as an engineer and the basic skills. A good engineer can take the junkiest gear and get a really good sound out of it. Unless something is technically wrong with that piece of gear.
I managed to save Robert every week, so, there's a start.
And that's not even the gear. That's just like the talent and the voice. And
that's right.
Like, there's a lot to fix.
Just mute his track. It's pretty easy to fix, Robert. Just mute that track.
Yeah.
That's all right.
Well, that was fun. Is it over?
The Pro Audio Suite, with thanks to TriBooth and Austrian Audio. Recorded using Source Connect. Edited by Andrew Peters and mixed by Robbo. Got your own audio issues? Just ask Robbo.com. With tech support from George the Tech Whittam. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and join in the conversation on our Facebook group. To leave a comment, suggest a topic, or just say g'day, drop us a note at our website, theproaudiosuite.com.